Welcome back with more experience. Today's video is about one of my favorite artists, should be also one of your favorite artists, I think, Stevie Wonder. My top 10 favorite songs. I've been listening to him last couple of days, so that's why I was inspired to do that video. It's a top 10. I will start with my number 10, which is It's a Shame. I don't think he ever recorded it for himself, at least I don't know a released version by him or any version by him singing it, but it was a hit for the Detroit Spinners. Just the Spinners, but at that time I think they were still called the Detroit Spinners, Motown act at that time. They had some great singles, but It's a Shame is probably my favorite Detroit Spinners songs, and it's written by Stevie Wonder. And it sounds like this early 70s kind of Stevie Wonder, which we'll come to later in that video a couple of times, which is one of my favorite of his phases, before he was that big serious concept album or album guy with those big, especially mid-70s albums, which were like each album a masterpiece for like 4 or 5 consecutive albums. But this was still the single-oriented, classical 60s, early 70s Motown kind of Stevie Wonder, and nothing wrong with that, because I like great singles, and It's a Shame is a great single. It's not, I would say it's my favorite Detroit Spinners single, and if it would have been a Stevie Wonder, an official Stevie Wonder single, it still would be one of his at least 10 best songs, so maybe one of his 5, 6, 7, 8 best singles for me. Number 9 is from my favorite Stevie Wonder album, Songs in the Key of Life, which was also featured in several videos now. I think in my favorite summer albums of all time, it must have been the top 5. It's a great double album, and the song is Sir Duke, think about or dedicated to Duke Ellington, with great brass section and great hook line. It's very like all the songs on that, or most of the songs on that album, very joyous, very upbeat, stomping, very optimistic, and that's why it was one of my favorite summer albums. Very summery, very sunny, very warm, and great. What more can you say? It's a great song. Number 8 is, I think this is the most divisive or controversial thing in that video. Some people, or most people especially, the more deeper they are into Stevie Wonder, and the more they're like serious music fans, they hate that song. By now I think you know which song I'm referring to. It's I Just Called to Say I Love You. Maybe his biggest worldwide hit. I remember it from my childhood when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old. One of my first memories with a song that was a current hit at the time. So maybe that's why I've got this nostalgic love for it, but I'm not ashamed of it. I don't think it's a guilty pleasure. I can understand when you're a serious Stevie Wonder fan from the 70s that this sounds a bit lame to you. It's very cheap sounding synthy part, and the drums sound like it's probably a drum computer, or if it's a real drummer, it's very automatic sounding. So maybe it's not his most vibrant, soulful song, but it's a brilliant pop hit, and I appreciate it. I Just Called to Say I Love You. I also remember it from the Cosby Show, when the Cosbys in their universe met Stevie Wonder, and then they kind of recorded that song in the studio with him or something like that. So childhood memories. What more can I say? Number 7 is a bit more obscure, but from the same phase, also from his very successful, the last really peak period commercially he had in the early to mid 80s, and it's the second of the 2 collaborations with Paul McCartney, both on Paul's excellent Tug of War album, The Big Hit. I couldn't include The Big Hit in the top 10, that would have been too much for people who hate I Just Called to Say I Love You. Those people also really hate Ebony and Ivory. Again, I like that song because I'm a Stevie Wonder fan and a Paul McCartney fan, and I like, I like also the subject matter of the song. People say it's a bit too soppy or not going too deep into the subject, but again, I was a child when I first listened to that song, and so I like Evan and Ivory, but it's not part of the top 10. Would be too uncool to have both those early 80s Wonder hits in my top 10. But I'm talking about the other song on Tug of War, which always preferred to Evan and Ivory still. It's What's That You're Doing, bit obscure, this is an album which has many McCartney classics on it. This isn't one, it's often overlooked, maybe because it's for many people too long. I think it's about 7 minutes long, but it's a great, aggressive, stomping funk song. It's Paul McCartney doesn't get that funky very often. It's a bit like his sequel to Arrow Through Me, which was from his album before, from Back to the Egg, his first excursion into that kind of funky territory. But with the help of Stevie Wonder, he really improves. Arrow Through Me is a great song, but I think What's That You're Doing goes the extra mile and is really a great funk, at least for Paul McCartney, a great funk song. And I also like the background vocals by Linda. Yeah, most people don't really like that song, even Paul McCartney fans, and maybe some not hardcore, but casual Stevie Wonder fans don't even know that song, because I'm not sure, does he have a songwriting credit on that song? It's maybe 100% a Paul McCartney written song, and if it's not 100% Paul McCartney, then it's like an 80% Paul McCartney song, but it sounds like a jam, so I think he should have a credit on that song, because with those jammy songs you can't really say one had that inspiration and wrote it from scratch, so it's a bit like in a rehearsal they played around and then the thing came out. I like What's That You're Doing, so that's my number 7. Number 6 is a big classic, and I think now everyone will agree with me. This is a song that the casual Stevie Wonder fans and the hardcore Stevie Wonder fans both love, and even you don't even have to be a Stevie Wonder fan, you just have to like classics from the 70s and you will like that song. Superstition, from the Talking Book album with Jeff Beck on guitar. Although that you wouldn't have needed Jeff Beck, when you're reading the credits on the album. I have it on CD, and that was when I first got aware. That was when I first became aware that Jeff Beck is playing on it. I knew the song before I bought Talking Book. That song was one of the reasons why I bought the album Talking Book like 15 years ago. And then I found out guitar by Jeff Beck on Superstition. And I was like, there's a guitar on that song? But when you're listening with that in mind, of course there's a very important guitar part. But I think you wouldn't have needed a legend like him to play that part. It's maybe that was just Stevie Wonder name dropping for sake of name dropping. I just called Jeff Beck to say play on my song, kind of thing, because maybe Stevie himself could have played that part. But it's it's a great song where many great hooks and rhythms come together, and I wanted to say, and it really works, but it does more than that. It's really from these kind of songs. Stevie Wonder has more of songs that sound a bit like that, like Higher Ground, which is also a great song. But I think this is not just the most popular, but also the best of those kind of songs. My number 4, and from now on I really would say these are like mega classics in my book. Those are songs I can listen to any day, and would say they're all up among maybe my 100 favorite soul and R&B songs of all time. And number 4 is Signed, Sealed, Delivered. I think I've mentioned it before with It's a Shame. It's kind of the same phase, early 70s. I think it's from 1970, even from that year. It's also the title song of, it's probably his most underrated album. I really like the Signed, Sealed, Delivered album isn't that in that era where critics say every album he made is a masterpiece, from at least, the album after that, I think Music on My Mind, with that album, his great I'm an artist phase starts and goes on until the end of the 70s with The Secret Life of Plants, which of course was his most controversial album, but still, very like I'm an artist. It was in that mood. Then in the 80s became he became mainstreamy again, but the 70s, that was like the, kicked off by Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, the first Motown album that tried to be more than the Motown sound and then hit singles. Inspired by that, Stevie also went in this more artistic direction with more artistic control. But Signed, Sealed, Delivered is the end of the classic 60s Motown phase when he just wanted to have hits. And the album is great, it's great it's packed with all those 2 minute typical Motown songs, and Signed, Sealed, Delivered, the title track, is by far the best of those. It's a fantastic song. Number 3 is He's Mr. Know-It-All from Inner Visions. I would say Inner Visions is, I would say it's my second favorite Stevie Wonder album, only beaten by the impeccable Songs in the Key of Life. I would say Signed, Sealed, Delivered is my third favorite Stevie Wonder album, by the way. But Inner Visions, I think it's according to the list, I'm looking at the list, it's my favorite Inner Visions song, and that says a lot. I think, and I don't think I think, I know, it's about Richard Nixon, Mr. Know-It-All. Richard Nixon at the time was president, and maybe that was also around the Watergate scandal or shortly before that, but he was still, he was a very important president, I think, for the United States, but not just for good reasons, And I think Inner Visions was from 1972. When was Watergate? Maybe it was around the time or a bit later. But very tumultuous times in America with the Vietnam War, and still the civil rights movement was still had to go places, and then Stevie Wonder was of course very an activist in all those movements, I would say. And Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, He's Mr. Know-It-All, reflects that, and it's a great song. And it could be about anyone who's like a narcissist or an egotistical guy. So it's not like it's just a time capsule that only works when you have the political context. You don't even have to agree politically with Stevie Wonder, but it's a great song about someone who knows it better all the time. So great subject for a song. Number 2 is back to the more optimistic, upbeat, Life is Great songs by Stevie Wonder, again from the early phase before he went I'm a big artist. So this must have been from the 60s, from like 68, 69, I don't know. For Once in My Life, maybe even before that, maybe even 67. But it's from the classic phase of when he was when he was predominantly known as a great singles artist with great singles hits. And For Once in My Life is the best of those high energy soul R&B Motown songs by him, I think. But my number 1 is a different phase, is from my favorite album. I think we only had Sir Duke. Sir Duke is from Songs in the Key of Life, which was number 9. And number 1 is, it's not really a tie, it's a tie, but it's also one song. It's 2 tracks on the album, but to me it's like one piece of work, because it's a medley, and I would say it's the best medley in pop history. It's my favorite medley in pop history. It's the great climax, the end of Songs in the Key of Life. Before these 2 songs, this medley comes, if the album would have finished with the song before, it still would be that big masterpiece. It didn't need that as an album closer, but when these 2 songs finally arrive, it's like, wow, the best bonus you would never have asked for, and it's Another Star /S. That's just that's fantastic. That's one of the most spectacular songs with hook lines and rhythms and instrumentation and the singing. It's also him as a singer, but also the background vocals by this choir. Because I think that was the phase when Stevie Wonder, like Prince 10 years later, would play almost all the instruments in the studio. But it has so much live feeling that there must have been involvement by other musicians at least on the basis of the track before he started overdubbing organs and stuff like that. But it's a great song, and I think it's like a blueprint for what Michael Jackson also. He also inspired the King of Pop, not just with that medley. I think throughout his career he must have been one of his biggest inspirations, but this song especially is like the best Michael Jackson song, but only 10 years before the heyday of Michael Jackson, done by Stevie Wonder. So those are my top 10 favorite Stevie Wonder songs. I also mentioned my top 3 favorite albums by his, so I don't have to do an ranking his albums video, because I told you, number 1, Songs in the Key of Life, number 2, Inner Visions, number 3, Sight Still Delivered. If I had to pick a number 4, it would be either Fulfillingness First Finale or Talking Book. And I also like Secret Life of the Plants. Most people, or some people, hate it. I really liked it when he went too far. He went a bridge too far with that album, but that's what I enjoy about it. And the album afterwards, Hotter Than July, when his return to more mainstream kind of music started. That's also a great album. So those were my favorite songs and my favorite albums by one of the greatest artists of all time, Stevie Wonder. Thank you very much for watching.